Back and bigger than ever. It's the unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com. Now, here's the entire Sooner Scoop crew. Carrie, Josh, Eddie, and
George.
All right, welcome back. It is the unofficial 40 podcast right here on Soonerscoop.com podcast, and glad to be back with you. Apologize for being a day late on this one yesterday, just battling the crud yesterday, but we are back and in action, and happy Chet Holmgren Day to everybody.
You know, everybody has their own fair share of battles. Our friends down south, down I-35, a little bit of a different circumstance, and we're wondering if the best team in the NBA is going to be able to get Chet Holmgren back into the swing of things.
The league is fucked.
I hope so. This is
now. Are you guys scrambling to get tickets for tomorrow night?
No.
No, but I might look. I might look right now.
Yeah, if somebody wants to
check the game,
buy
time?
tickets or give me tickets, I'll go to the game. But I'm not actively looking. I am excited about the game on Saturday.
That's really
night.
thoughtful.
Yeah, I can see Eddie like turning down tickets if they're not good enough, though. Too.
I would 100%. I'm not sitting in Loud City or something. What do you think this is? I'm a lower bowl suite wherever. Haven't been up to Loud City in a while. We respect the people. They've been having a good time up there, though.
You can get lower bowl tickets for $77 right now.
Yeah, that probably has a lot to do with the Raptors coming in town, but I'm excited. This is
$54.
It's been fun.
Raptors have
like they're going right now, guys. You get to watch like a half and then go do whatever you'd like to do with your night because the game will be over. They will have murdered someone.
You would hope. That's been the best part about the Thunder experience is just they're not just winning. They just absolutely murder teams. I think of the 40 wins, 31 have been by double digits. Is that right? They said that on the broadcast last night.
I was like 31. I think they've only been down by double digits like 16 games this year or something like that.
It's incredible. It's been a lot of fun. It's a good time to be in Oklahoma City. We are thinking about the people in Dallas.
Yeah, such a shame for those Mavericks fans. I feel really bad for them.
They're such a lovely group of people, too.
Yeah.
For something like that to happen to them.
There is a level of I thought it was hilarious.
Hey, we're only Josh, you're only about a year away from obnoxious Rockets fans reappearing. They make a run.
They're probably already back.
If they make a run, to the second round of the playoffs this year, yeah, you're going to be dealing with some shitheads.
Yeah, they're and I wear a fair amount of Thunder gear around, so I will absolutely piss some people off.
Well,
I will say I also hate the Lakers.
Good with it.
I hate the Lakers too. So
we were born to hate the Lakers.
Who's the team you guys
City?
hate the most? Like
it was the Mavericks.
Team? For me, it's the Mavericks. Yeah.
I don't hate them as much anymore. A lot of the hate generated from Luka. And I respected his game.
Just because of his crybaby nature.
It was in the playoffs last year. It was just annoying.
I did think that
he's
was
obviously an incredible player.
There was some. I mean, it's a great time of year because trade deadline ends today, and we're kind of. I would say the NBA trade deadline in the middle of the season is probably the best trade deadline in sports because, I mean, football doesn't really have it as much. Just a countdown like this. College football is getting there. I would say the transfer portal is fully more chaotic and crazy than signing day had ever been since in the last 10 years. Like signing day had gotten boring. The transfer portal woke everything back up.
Dead. I mean, yesterday was just if nobody. It's like on Monday we talked about it on the YouTube show, Josh. If nobody would have if you wouldn't have said anything, Carrie, about National Signing Day, I wouldn't even have thought about it. It's not even on the radar anymore. Congratulations to all the guys that signed. Obviously coming out of the spring semester, but.
I mean, it's great. Like I saw, Tuttle High School having a signing day ceremony,
and for small schools, it still is
and stuff.
The UCO D2s of the world and that kind of stuff.
But when you're talking about,
that's what sucks. Like those schools used to get run because, excuse me, I can remember going. Best example I can think of is going to Gerald McCoy's announcement when he was a senior, and they had 10 other guys sign. And, those names got run in the paper like, oh, yeah, this guy signed with Panhandle State or this guy signed with the NEO or whatever. So they got a little bit of shine just because all the other guys, the major guys were bringing media there. But nobody's going to those things anymore. And I mean, that just sucks because that for the for the kids themselves as well as the schools. Like they don't get to get a little bit of ink just for being there, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, didn't seem like it was too long ago where we were going to Westmore to Dahu Green's signing day, and like there was every other sport, women and men, got to sit along the big table row and get announced and kind of doted on.
It probably also doesn't help that, I would say, like, what is the percentage of the 2025 class that is early enrolling? It's probably not as big as we would think, but outside of like the top 300, like the On3 300, I would imagine, I bet 65% of those guys, if not more, are early enrollees.
I was going to say at the P4 level, I bet it's 70%.
Yeah.
Like I bet it's that high. Because I know like Oklahoma has 2 that didn't enroll, and one of them was going to. He just, the numbers didn't work out.
Right.
So and I know
they had to,
I didn't pay attention to it, but am I wrong in saying the most high-profile person that was left to sign on signing day that hadn't signed didn't even sign in Ty Haywood?
Did he not sign?
Did he not sign anywhere?
I thought he went to Michigan.
He committed. He definitely committed. Now,
I see.
With Ty, I can't be sure if he signed. I mean, like, let me go. Yeah, it shows him his sign.
Okay.
It shows that he signed. So, but yeah, I mean, that was the deal. And, Michigan getting that Silicon Valley money, man, all of a sudden they went to like a top 5, top 6 class in the country.
It's funny how that works, isn't it?
Weird.
That must just be really good recruiters banking in off their win over a national champion.
It's funny how like a lot of the guys like for years, like Georgia and Alabama are just incredible recruiters. I mean, I'm not saying they aren't, but it's interesting now that the field's getting leveled. All of a sudden you're starting to see schools that we're not used to seeing sign 5-stars start doing it pretty regularly.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a perfect example. I just didn't pay attention. It's kind of like, I don't know, I missed out on a lot of things. Like I didn't know that Chip Kelly left Ohio State for like 2 days after. And George was saying, who were you saying yesterday you had?
Rob Ryan.
Rob Ryan. You didn't know that he'd gone to USC.
That clip of Rob Ryan, I don't even know what he's talking about. I thought he was on drugs, and then I thought it was maybe AI.
He is.
He probably is on drugs, but he was just Rob Ryan being Rob Ryan.
It was insane. It was an all-time video.
He knows, what's the guy's name? Kaluska?
I have no idea who that is.
I don't either. Must be, if you ever go to Hawaii, we should have asked Dylan Gabriel when he was here on Tuesday. Maybe it's a Hawaiian phrase.
Yeah, it was good seeing
I thought Eddie was going for ayahuasca there.
Good seeing Dylan.
Maybe that's what he was
Drake.
saying. Yeah, it was great to see Drake. Dylan's lost a lot of weight.
I know
we were talking
skinny.
about that.
I mean, I was going to say something to him, but they were kind of in and out. I would imagine that he's trying to shed as many pounds as possible to pick up speed for the Combine.
Yeah.
He did say that he was going to the Combine. If you haven't watched The Family Business, go do that on our YouTube page. Also, it's just $1 to sign up. So go support the thing that lets us be here, which is Soonerscoop.com, and become a subscriber. And a lot of stuff on the website going. George was making some phone calls, working on a feature on Nate Dreiling, which may or may not mean that he's doomed.
Hey, I haven't written one in a while that's caused doom.
What was the last one? It was just
You can't cause doom when it's a
probably
constant state of doom.
Seth Luttrell that doomed him.
Jackson Arnold doomed him.
Jackson Arnold doomed him.
I'm trying to think who else.
Deion Burks before he was injured for the season.
I don't think I wrote one on him.
No, not that I remember.
I mean, every time I write anything, though, about anybody, the joke is that I've doomed them.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know how it works at Scoop.
That's forever going to be the joke. Like,
Yeah,
that will
I mean-
never change, George. You could write about 3 Heisman Trophy winners, and they'll still remember
I did.
that you doomed them. Like
I did.
But
the
not for
joke
Sooner
for me
Scoop.
will always be, Josh, go on vacation so you can get commitments. I go on vacation, as you guys know, constantly. I'm always gone, and yet still, the class is not where they want it to be. So the jokes they write themselves.
George, have you learned anything about, as you're compiling information about Nate Dreiling, that maybe you didn't know going in, or do you feel different? I don't know about different about the hire as much as maybe just, has there been anything surprising?
Not really. I mean, he just very highly recommended. I actually spoke to Jerry Kill today for a few minutes, and He was awesome. Just talking about Nate and his demeanor and the way that he took care of business. Certainly sounds like a Brent Venables guy. And also he runs a defense that is basically the same as Brent's, and so it's a perfect fit in that sense. And I thought the recruiting stuff was interesting. He was talking about how he recruited at New Mexico State. He found a lot of guys that, were not highly recruited and developed them into good players, but he was talking about how difficult it was to recruit there, and he was able to get some good players in, and then obviously turn them into really good players for New Mexico State, and just the turnaround he did there. Like, sure. Jerry Kill was telling me about how bad they were defensively, and how Nate, as just a 30-year-old coach, came in and really turned the whole thing around. So I thought that was really interesting. And then I also talked to his dad, and you can read the story. It's going to be on Soonerscoop.com Friday morning. Talked to his dad. He goes way back with Brent Venables. I won't give all the details because I want people
fascinating.
I want people to read it. But they go back 30 plus years when Brent was just getting into the coaching profession. So really cool story that you should check out on Soonerscoop.com.
I'd also say I actually had a parent of a player that reached out, said that he had listened to the podcast, shout out, and basically said that his son had been recruited. Or he knew somebody that had been recruited by Nate Dreiling when he was at New Mexico State. And he said that any concerns about him from a recruiting perspective probably kind of way off. He's going to be fine is basically the message.
I think my takeaway from the whole Nate Dreiling and Wes Goodwin stuff, and I'm sure people are tired of us talking about it because we've been talking about it for weeks now, but if Jim Knowles never happens, like if that phone call never happens, I think we're looking at this as like, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's a home run hire, but I would say it's a pretty good hire. He went out and got a guy that was a interim head coach.
It's a Zach Alley
year.
type hire.
Yeah, and Wes Goodwin, you bring on a guy like, and I get it. Some people don't like him or don't think he's been very good at Clemson, but I mean, when you get somebody that's been a DC like that at Clemson, as basically he's working for pennies on the dollar. Like, I think it's a pretty damn good hire.
If it was at a different school, like if Nick Saban had brought him into Alabama or wherever, just as an example, I think we would be looking at it and saying, damn, so they're getting a guy that was a former DC and a pretty damn good program to come in and basically help. Mm-hmm. I know they're going to be paying him. He's not a volunteer assistant, but he's basically helping.
And he's somebody that he was, from what I understand, when he was at Clemson with Brent, he was attached at the hip. He was a big part of what they were doing defensively. That's why he was elevated. He was just an analyst when they elevated him to defensive coordinator. He was basically in Brent's back pocket, helping him come up with game plans and schemes and all sorts of stuff. So,
and you want to talk about, defenses and struggles and things like that. Like, their offense stunk for a large part of the last couple of years. That Georgia game they played where that was a game at halftime. It was like 3-0 at halftime. I think Georgia ended up winning 34-0. Like, was that a week 0 game or first week game?
It was the Labor Day weekend.
So it's like they could play defense, but they didn't get any support from the offense until later in the season.
It was 6-0 at halftime. I think
6-0.
I want to say Georgia might have kicked a field goal like right at the buzzer before halftime or something.
Right.
But they played well.
I just think it's all of the defensive stuff, and even Brent calling the defense. And I've been pretty open about it. I think that he eventually has to hand it off, but ultimately it's going to come down to Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer. Like, if this thing's going to work next year, they have to figure it out on offense. I
like you said, the Knowles thing threw everything for a loop.
I don't think Nate Dreiling is going to make or break Oklahoma's season next year.
No, but I think he could be a guy that, and I think Brandon Hall's the same way. Somebody's going to be able to take over this defense as a coordinator
eventually.
If Brent makes it 2 more years and says, okay, it's time for me to give the reins over to somebody. So anyway, outside of signing day, which there's big nothing burger, and the Dreiling hire and Goodwin hire becoming official. It's really just been kind of basketball around here lately. You didn't expect OU to go into Auburn and win that game. They did play well for a while, but in the end, it's just, this team just isn't deep enough. They're not consistent enough. Jeremiah Fears had to have a good game. It didn't happen. Jalen Moore was good, but didn't carry the team on his back. And when you play a team that's number one in the country and you're giving up a lot of rebounds, there was some weird stuff going on with, I thought, kind of Auburn trying to bait Jeremiah Hall into technicals and stuff, and I don't even want to get going on the
Jeremiah Fears.
What did I say? Jeremiah Hall. Jeremiah Fears.
I don't think that would have gone very well if they were baiting.
No, it would
Jeremiah
not.
Hall.
It would. That's 100% right.
Listen, this is the summary of OU-Auburn. Auburn has a chance to win the national championship, and they probably are the odds-on favorite right now. They might be one of the better college basketball teams that we've seen in recent memory, just from what they've been able to do and how deep they are. It was going to be a tough ask.
Eddie, let me ask you this. Gun to your head, is OU going to make the NCAA tournament this year?
Yes. Now, it's going to be tough. I mean, you look at...
I think he values his life as much as he should.
I don't know about... It's going to be tough. I think that they're in a better spot, and maybe a lot of this has to do... I know that me and Joe Jr. have talked about this a lot just on text message. Basically every night we go through the bubble scenario.
You
and
have found
that are in.
a kindling...
somebody that actually
spirit.
will watch college basketball with me. The bubble right now is very soft. There's not a whole lot of teams that are in that bubble mix, but it's also very short, and there's not a whole lot of runway for error. So you got to take care of business. Now, obviously, Tennessee coming in town Saturday, going to be extremely tough. I don't think it's crazy to say that you could win that game. They're going to have to shoot the ball extremely well to do that.
I want to see what this team is after being the team that could beat Vanderbilt by 30 at home. I think this team has gotten better as SEC play has gone along, but it's not where it needs to be, not even close.
I just don't think that they're at the point where they can go really, truly compete with the big boys.
I didn't think Arkansas was at that point either, but they seem to be gaining steam.
Yeah, they're okay. I think they're going to push for bubble territory, but I don't know.
They're in better
how much
position.
can they grow as much as they're getting killed inside? How much can that?
Godwin
evolve?
is just such a liability
you guys know better
in
than me.
so many ways.
What's the question, Josh?
I talking about where they need to go and how much better they can get or whatever. Can they really grow that much as limited as they are inside?
This year?
Yeah. I'm just talking about this season.
It's tough. I actually think that it's kind of like what we've talked about, and it's a little bit like the same thing that we've talked about for the last 3 years. If you get into the tournament with the right matchup, I think they could win a game. They could definitely win a game. I just think that when you're caught in this SEC bubble or the Big 12 bubble that we've been in over the last couple years, there's some really fucking good basketball teams and extremely talented basketball teams that are terrible matchups for Oklahoma in the SEC, and a lot of it has to do because of what they don't have in the front court.
If they win this weekend, they're going to make the tournament.
Yeah, the Missouri thing's a little bit interesting. You still have to play them twice. I think Missouri and what they were able to do in Knoxville and what they've been able to do just over the course of the year has been pretty impressive. Dennis Gates has kind of turned that thing around. I don't know. I like to talk about the good. I mean, Dayton Forsyth's been unbelievable, and if you were talking about the building of a future and you knew that somebody like a Jeremiah Fears could come back next year, it'd be fantastic to be able to build around that backcourt. I just don't know what the reality is. Obviously, Dayton's not going to go anywhere, but if Fears goes to the NBA or wherever.
You never know in the transfer portal.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
if they have a coaching change.
I say that just because he's an Oklahoma kid. I think that playing for Oklahoma means something to him, which I think, he has definitely kind of ingratiated himself to the fan base because of those reasons, and also because he's been really good.
All right, let's get away from this basketball talk for just a second and check in with our Eddie Radosevich, who walks around these halls every day with perfect vision, making everyone jealous. Eddie, I guess we need to go see you guys at Enjoy.
Absolutely. It's a new year for Sooner fans, and that means new opportunities to win championships, get back on track, especially the football program. And thanks to Enjoy Vision, you can also save $1,000 on LASIK. Glasses and contacts were so last season. It's time to see every play, every highlight, and every win in crystal clear vision. All you got to do is schedule your free consultation today at enjoyvision.com. That is the letter N, J-O-Y, vision.com. And start the new year with a fresh perspective and keep an extra $1,000 in your pocket while you're at it. Enjoy Vision. This is where you Sooner Scoop LASIKs.
How much does Enjoy help you when OU wears the Unity uniforms?
I probably indifferent. I think they're bad uniforms.
It's hard for us to see in the press box. I might need to go check what they enjoy. So, all right, that's going to do it. Well, not going to do it. Anyway, shit. I'll fix this. All right, let's get back to basketball talk. Thanks to Enjoy Vision. They are going to be our new sponsors of all of our 4K content on YouTube. So appreciate them being a part of the Unofficial 40 and our YouTube channel. I'm a couple ways with OU basketball right now. Like, this is how, like, you get to this point of the season, you kind of know what the roster is, but at the same time, you convince yourself that someone's getting better, or someone that you didn't like early in the year is maybe better than you thought. Like, if you want to give up on Sam Godwin, I'm fine with that. Like,
I gave up on him 2 years ago.
He does some good
But when
things.
you say giving up, like, what were you really, truly expecting, I guess, too, would be my pushback.
Well, my thing with Godwin is he can rebound the ball. The things that he can do show some value from time to time. It's just he cannot stop himself from trying to interject himself on the offensive end of the floor. And it goes badly, very badly every time. Versus like a Wagi who, you don't know if you're getting a guy that's coming in just to foul out or a guy that's actually going to give you a couple of possessions and do some things that help the team. Like, he just seems to be regressing. But
yeah, I think
they're playing against better competition. I just think that they're very average big men. That's kind of what
I would
it
say
is.
they're even below average. But I think that if they end up not making the NCAA tournament, we'll look back and there's obviously some losses in the season, but
It'll be
their
2 games.
their inability to get a big guy in the portal was a massive failure.
yeah. And Porter hasn't shown the ability to have a big guy. And develop him. It seemed like, I can't even remember which one of the Groves. He got worse when he came to Oklahoma.
I forgot about them.
Well, he's kind of soft.
Well, I think isn't that the biggest thing? Because it's not like if Godwin was just here now, where he is, okay, but he's been a primary role guy for them in the block for 3 years.
He just doesn't have a very good skill set. He's not. He's a guy that you want coming off the bench. There are times Northweather's not a big. He might as well not even be a big, but he does about the same thing as Wagi and Godwin at times. Just a tall guy underneath the net. And there are times when I'm like, okay, let's see more Northweather, and there are other times I'm like, get him off the floor. It's kind of how I am with Goodine a little bit.
Either way, I do think I'm with Eddie though. I think they're going to make the NCAA tournament. Looking at their schedule, I think they'll beat LSU. I think they'll beat Mississippi State, and hell, I think they might beat Kentucky at home.
I think every game's a toss-up.
Or Missouri at home.
I don't.
Mississippi
trust
State's
They got to get four
talented.
more. They got to get 4 more wins.
Yeah,
And I think
so.
I think if they can win the games at least win 3 of these 4 at home, and then maybe steal one on the road, then they'll get in, because their schedule's just so difficult. And like the SEC, that's their thing. They got screwed this year with the SEC. It's arguably the greatest basketball conference since like the 80s.
They're getting jumped in.
It's pretty good. They got some very elite teams at the top.
What did you guys think about the broadcasters going out of their way to kind of chastise the OU fan base?
I wasn't listening. So
yeah, I turned off the broadcast. They were so bad.
It was bad. It's hard.
Is it just? It's not only the broadcast is bad. Has anybody else noticed that on a lot of these SEC games, they're like either limiting the crowd noise or like their mics are sound different? I don't know if I'm the only one that's noticed that.
I think it's just overall poor production, cheap production.
Yeah. I think the broadcasters were so bad though.
What I found from the SEC network is it and I think you still have these remnants, like Eddie knows this, that go back to the old Raycom days, and you used to have, before ESPN, you actually had stuff broadcast on other kind of cable channels and things like that, but it just seems like the SEC they're not very good. It just in their region, they're not all that great at broadcasting. Like, a lot of times the places look dark, and they always have some yokel, color analyst who's just like, you can tell he either coached at the school that they're playing or actively roots for them on the side. It's a little old school, not that professional. And I'm just talking about basketball. I think Jordan Rodgers is like a star in college football.
I watch a lot of college basketball. I very rarely have the volume up.
Yeah. I just think also college basketball, and Eddie's not going to like this take. It's just not a great product, in my opinion, overall.
I mean, compared to the NBA, it's not. But you can't watch. I said this forever. You can't watch college basketball with NBA eyes.
You have to separate the two.
I agree, but I also just don't think it's as interesting as it was 10 years ago either. Like, I just think the product is not as interesting.
Yeah, I get that. You're not alone. I think that the majority of people that take in college basketball casually would say that, but I also think that, like,
he's very condescending about this.
Well, I just don't. You don't. I'm trying to think how to describe this. It's not for just checking in, if that makes sense. Like,
I agree.
You gotta, like, kind of, with trying to think, like UConn, for example, to watch their ups and downs this year. It seems like they're starting to play extremely well. They beat had a big win last week against Marquette on Saturday. They're finding ways to win. They have a big game on Friday night against St. John's, maybe for the Big East title. But I don't know.
Have you ever seen George? Have you ever seen the Big East kind of? I don't know if it's a 30 for 30.
Yeah, it is.
Is it a 30 for 30?
Yeah.
But like, go. Have you seen that?
No.
You need to go watch that.
You have to understand where I'm coming from.
Listen to me. Let me make the point.
It's a bad point.
Damn. Like when the Big East formed, it became this big television league. It became like this national sensation. It's really the first time college basketball became important on television to a national stage. And like, here in this part of the country, the Big Eight, it started to blow up in the Big Eight tournament, and you had Oklahoma and Kansas and Missouri, and this part of the country kind of had an identity with their college conference. So, like, what's happened now, I think, is that you have all these Cinderellas that are out there that have popped up out of nowhere, and it's no longer college basketball is no longer dominated by the name brands. North Carolina, I mean, Georgetown's not even a thing anymore. They're
getting better.
Syracuse, I mean, was a huge deal. I mean, it was a national brand. You don't have a lot of national brands in college football or college basketball because, one, ESPN started putting all the focus on like Duke, North Carolina, and that really kind of watered down things. And then you didn't have, the big names in the middle of the country anymore. I mean, you had Kansas, and that was about it. They beat everybody. What did they win the Big 12? Like 12, 14 years in a row or something?
The regular season title.
I don't know. I think I don't know what any of that has to do with.
What was the point?
I just didn't grow up watching college basketball, so I've just never really cared. That's my point. Like, I loved some of the OU teams back in the day. Like, I loved Blake Griffin when I was a kid.
That makes sense,
right?
And what I'm saying is
when I was a freshman, but
not as good a product as it once was. It's not packaged the same it used to be.
No, but I also I come from a different perspective. When I was a kid, I only watched OU play, and even then, I didn't watch them play every week. Like, it was like I was a college football kid, and I just did not care. And I think I don't know this, but I would guess that a large part of the OU fan base is kind of the same way, where basketball season rolls around, they hope OU does well, but they're not tuning in and locked in on every single. And that's part of the reason why it's not like a great product sometimes.
To me, there's still, and I was telling my buddy about this the other day. To me, we were talking about college basketball just in general, kind of the same conversation. To me, there's still like this innocent pageantry about college basketball that's still there, even though I know it's not there. And I don't think the same could be said for college football. I don't know if that makes any sense.
But
maybe it's because
I'll say this.
Maybe it's because the tournament's still at the end of the day it's the same
tournament
thing that it has always been.
And that's what I was going to say is, like, I didn't grow up watching a lot of college basketball, but I marked off my calendar for March Madness. Like, that was the best week of the year.
And that's become such a monster that's what they put all the energy into is March Madness.
Yeah.
Because that's where all the money is made.
I think
these football regular season media deals are massive. Not like NFL massive, but still massive. College basketball regular season, broadcast deals, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's nothing, that moves the needle really for an athletic department.
Yeah, you're like from viewership and stuff.
Just and what they're getting paid to
for
broadcast
a big
their
Monday
games.
game or whatever. Yeah.
Because you got Fox doing stuff. You got CBS doing stuff. You got, I don't know. Yeah. I guess, is NBC doing Big Ten basketball?
Yeah, they're doing Peacock.
Okay.
Peacock is.
Yeah,
which is actually, I will say, they have a very good broadcast.
Oh,
they
NBC's
have very good announcers.
Always been just top notch with their broadcast quality.
When I went
Fox
to
is pretty good, too.
When I went to Vegas last year for March Madness for the first 2 rounds, that was awesome.
Yeah.
And that was.
I don't think anything's ever going to change in terms of interest. In fact, it's gone up because of gambling in Thursday and Friday of the NCAA tournament. It's the 2 biggest, takeoff days of the year. And it's for a reason, because it's almost like a national holiday around here.
I will just say this for the olds out there. Like, for all of us who went through Billy Ball, we look at Oklahoma basketball through a completely different lens than everybody else. Because, and it's not shitting on current, it's just Billy Ball was, it was one of the biggest things in the country in any sport. Like, it was just massive. And I love Kelvin. He's my guy. Covered him, actually. Never covered Billy. We'll always love Kelvin and just the way he treated us. But as much success as he had, he didn't have the entertainment value or the excitement of Billy Ball.
No. I don't think anybody does.
See, I grew up, my first team, because I knew of Kelvin Sampson, but I was so young. The first team that I really fell in love with was the Blake Griffin team with Jeff Capel. I was like, this is amazing.
It's fun.
Like, I remember when he hit his head on the backboard.
Watching a team go on a run through March or February, or having a really good college basketball team is fun. I hope that at some point Oklahoma fans can get back to
and
that.
I think that's part of it too, Eddie.
I will say this too, that 09 team, just following them through the NCAA tournament, traveling, to cover every game. It's definitely in my top 5 of most enjoyable sports coverage moments.
And I would say too, part of the thing that's probably the last 10 years that it feels like it's just not as been dialed in is OU hasn't really made a run since the Buddy Hield team.
Sure.
When's the last time they got to the Sweet 16? Was that the Buddy Hield team?
2016, 2017, 2018. Yeah, I think so.
I mean, I think that's
Four.
part of it too. And one, they haven't made the tournament the last few years, but they haven't even made like a run.
Let me take a quick time out here to tell you guys about Cody Drug, because it's the start of a new year, and you're like most people, your health's the top of mind. So whether you're looking to shed a few pounds or just want to feel better overall, Cody Drug has you covered. I want to remind you guys, Cody Drug, big Sooner fans, Will, and the folks over there, big NIL supporters as well, big supporters of the Sooner Scoop and longtime Scoopers. They are licensed in Texas and Oklahoma to distribute custom GLP-1 weight loss medication in their state-of-the-art sterile lab, and then they overnight it to your house on ice. So if you go talk to your physician and you want to get started on a GLP-1 weight loss medication, just ask for your prescription to go through Cody Drug. Just go to CodyDrugRx.com to get started. They've got over 200,000 followers on Instagram. That's CodyDrugRx. Go check out Will and all the knowledge he's given out there about living your best life, being as healthy as you can and feeling as good as you can. They'll guide you through the types and amounts of supplements tailored to your individual needs, if that's what you want to get into. Weight loss drugs, very popular, and why not support a Sooner in Cody Drug? And go check them out on the website, CodyDrugRx.com. Shout out to Will, and we'll get back to the programming now.
In the last,
they haven't given fans a reason to be excited.
COVID really screwed Oklahoma men's athletics, because I think that
team was pretty.
That
good.
Austin Reeves team, they were going to make the NCAA tournament. They had a chance to maybe make a run. They were starting to play pretty well, and then the baseball side of things. I was talking to somebody about this yesterday at Media Day. I mean, that 2020 staff and what they were able to do in the 13 games or whatever they had played, had the no-hitter against LSU. It's unfortunate, but I don't know. Maybe, God willing, they can get this thing together, get some wins here coming in, and make the NCAA tournament. It'd be fun.
Yeah,
I think it would be great. I was talking to my dad. I think it'd be great. Like, the best thing that could happen to the OU athletic department right now is them making the NCAA tournament.
Oh, it'd be good.
Because if they don't, I think they're paying a buyout.
It's a major problem.
Yeah.
It's a major problem.
Well, and look, back to the original thing. I'm not gonna chastise the fan base for supporting or not supporting basketball.
What
like
were
you
they
said,
actually saying? I've never
just
even
basically that every time you go to an SEC arena that's sold out, it's they were just bragging on Auburn's atmosphere that night, and
it is awesome. They need to use that as like Auburn's Neville Arena needs to be the staple of this is what OU wants.
Yeah, but it turned into more like OU doesn't support their program like Auburn does theirs. And Auburn's number one in the country, and they're not any good at football. That's the other thing we know. It's just like with OSU. OSU basketball, nobody goes to those games because they're not any good, and they've been better at football recently. I mean, this was a down year, obviously. But the SEC is a little bit different in that, they do support things besides football, like baseball, and obviously all the arenas that we see are pretty full when the OU plays, but I don't blame the fans because it's been not going to the tournament, not making a Sweet 16, not having hope
when they have
that you're going to
up,
be in contention.
When they have shown up over the last 3 years,
then they lose.
Shit the bed, and it's not just lose the game, by a possession and you missed a shot at the end,
run off your floor.
Yeah, it's get embarrassed, and
the other thing is, people say we won't be critical, but the biggest mistake that Joe Castiglione has made as an athletic director, I believe, is not putting the basketball arena as more of a priority, always pushing it to the side, and now fans are just flat out embarrassed of their stadium. I don't know where the thing with the city of Norman's going to end up. It doesn't seem like it has any traction. And the citizens haven't even voted on it. They pushed back the vote. It's almost like they're pretending it never happened at this point.
Yeah, I haven't kept up with it. It feels like if this thing's actually going to go to a vote, it's not going to get passed.
So, I mean, I think there's a lot of things where, basketball fans understandably feel like they're not important and that basketball is not important. So if the university, I think that is the thing. If the university feels like it's not important enough to give us a nice arena, then why should we care?
Shout out OU Hoops Greg, though. He cares.
He does. I mean, people care. Just not 10,000 every night on a Wednesday at 8 o'clock.
I do think, though, that 99% of OU fans would say they would shut down the OU men's basketball program if it guaranteed them a national championship in football.
How many?
99%.
I don't know about 99. I think it'd be a
would.
decided majority, though. Yes.
Yeah.
So I was on the flip. I thought you were being a little light there, George.
Yeah, it might be 100%.
I would say this in closing about basketball. I still think that this team's a pretty good basketball team. In the grand scheme of things, it's just a night-to-night basis. You're going to get your ass beat by some of these teams on the road. It's going to happen. That's why you got to protect home court. That's why the Texas game was so important. That's why the Texas A&M game was so important. And if you don't make the NCAA tournament, you're going to go back to those games and go, what the fuck? And, I guess the good thing is if you can keep some of these games close, and I think that it's been well documented, Porter Moser to a certain extent over the last 3 years and what they've been able to, or haven't been able to do in, the final 4 minutes of a game. They're number 5 right now in free throw percentage nationally, which is kind of crazy for a team that's 16-6, 3-6.
Just in percentage made.
Yeah, I mean they're the 5th best free throw shooting team in the country, so maybe that'll mean something.
I would guess that they've lost the rebound, or lost the foul shooting. I don't know if it's a contest, but
they shot 29 on Tuesday night.
Did they?
Yeah.
Well, Auburn was a bunch of assholes, so.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing. I think that, this Auburn team is kind of great for college basketball because I think a lot of Oklahoma fans watching it and go, fuck those guys. They
were assholes. They were jerks.
Exactly. And
they played
good
with a lot of attitude. And it was a lot of it was aggression. I mean, they were very aggressive.
Yeah, I mean,
they literally tried to get Jeremiah Fears, out of the game by taunting him and fouling him.
Yeah, the Baker Mazara guy's 8 years older than Jeremiah Fears. 8.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's crazy. It's nuts.
All right, and then
what I'm trying to say is I'm hoping that Auburn becomes this villainous team over the next month. So when you get to the NCAA tournament, you'll be cheering for, Yale to upset them again in the NCAA tournament. I think that's why people love that weekend.
Bruce Pearl will just play right into that if that happens.
I think that I told my dad there's nobody that probably backs them more in their attitude and the way that they play than Bruce Pearl. He's the ultimate scumbag, but he knows he's a scumbag, and that's why we like him.
This is a lot of college basketball talk.
I know, this is great. You guys want to break down the San Francisco
Well, now
St.
that
Mary's
we've gotten
game tonight?
Eddie to just kind of take your I'm the expert veil down and let us talk about it, it's been kind of fun.
Yeah, I disagree with everything that George and Carrie have said, just to be clear.
That's okay. I accept that.
Us just newbies to the sport. Eddie puts in the dedication. I'll say that. He watches from the moment college basketball starts, he's watching it.
Let's be honest about why he's watching.
It's good to have a game on.
But yes, he is gambling. Yes.
Yeah, it's good to have a game on every once in a while. We're watching the golf tournament right now.
I see that.
I've got to say, kind of unrelated, but huge upset for me that George did not grow up watching college basketball.
I mean, I did.
I lived and died. I loved college basketball. I watched it a ton growing up.
I did, but not anybody other than OU, really. And even OU, like, if we had something else going on in the evening or like a Saturday, like it wasn't like it's appointment television for me. And then, but March Madness was. Me and my brother I remember my brother and I would sit upstairs in like our game room area or whatever, and we would move every single TV into there so we could watch every game at once. Because this was before you could like pull it up on like the app or whatever. So we'd plug in every TV upstairs so we could watch all the games. So I did, but like I wasn't watching like Duke, North Carolina when I was a kid growing up.
Oh,
but see, like
I can remember debating with my buddies like Stackhouse and Jameson versus Wallace and Vince Carter. Like, who was the better North Carolina duo? Like,
you also have to realize, like, when I was, 12, that's when the Thunder first came to Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
And I got sucked into the NBA immediately from a very young age.
I mean, the best way for me to explain it to younger people is to probably say, like, you know how Caitlin Clark blew up and became, like, someone as big as anyone in sports? Like, that it was a player-driven, like, women's basketball became a player-driven sport all of a sudden. And that's what college basketball used to be like. Like, I can still remember so many Missouri players from back in the Big 8 days. Like, and they were legitimate villains. Like, Eduardo Nájera was a villain to everyone in the Big 8. Missouri had like Derek Grimm,
Jason Sutherland.
Oh. But then, they had peers like Keon Dooling was a really good player for them, and Derek Chivas and Anthony Peeler was. But you're talking about teams that were putting guys in the NBA on a regular basis in the Big 8. Like, it wasn't like it is today where Austin Reeves gets in the NBA and we're like, oh, wow, he's actually going to succeed.
And, this is in thinking that somebody like a Dayton Forsythe is here for 4 years. Like, there couldn't be a more polar opposite, like, freshman season type of thing between him and Jeremiah Fierce, who, and I think this has a lot to do with why people have kind of stepped away from the college basketball world, and the same could be said for college football, is you don't have that guy that he's a freshman and you're going to build this thing around him and he's going to be here for 4 years. Because
the Kentucky's happened and
they're
the one
gone after
guns.
7 months of being on campus.
I do remember
and those were the teams that were winning the national championship. So
and I think
it's like all of a sudden these homegrown teams became basically, they just got thrown in the trash.
And I think when you look at an Auburn, when you look at some of these teams this year that are extremely, extremely good, it's very veteran-led. There's a lot of guys that have played a ton of basketball.
This is having me reminisce, but Tony Crocker, loved him.
Crocker.
I had his jersey.
Or he was on the 09
Austin Johnson, Blake Griffin, obviously, Taylor Griffin, Longar.
I partied with these guys, George.
Who was the guy? I remember the game when they played Missouri, and he shot the three at the buzzer, and it went in and out, and it popped out. Remember what game? Who was that?
Well, that was,
and they lost.
It was Buddy. Are you talking about Buddy up in the Big 12 tournament in 2016?
No. I was in.
You didn't party with Jabari Brown.
It was a conference game.
He's a little bit older.
And it was like a meme.
Probably would have bought weed.
Josh partied with Jabari Brown.
Josh definitely bought weed from Jabari. 100%.
Who was his roommate that they found?
Was it Nolan Johnson?
I can't remember. gosh.
It could have been
like,
Nolan Johnson. Yeah.
It was like 2012.
Jabari's thing was over at the apartments catty corner. To
No,
Lloyd Noble,
Nolan
wasn't
was
it?
the 90s.
Not Nolan Johnson. He was early 2000s.
Yeah. Was he? Okay.
Maybe he might have been around
like
in 99.
97.
Josh.
Okay. I could be off on that. I was thinking 90.
It wasn't
Who am I
Alex
thinking
Spalding.
of? Oh, was it the kid from was Austin Johnson?
No, it wasn't Austin.
No,
it
because
was like,
Austin was on the 09 team.
gosh, and I remember seeing it like yesterday, and he like shot it, and it went around and out, and at the buzzer.
Is it?
And everybody thought he
was
made it.
in Columbia.
No, it was at
I
Lloyd
loosely
Noble.
remember a game like that, but I don't remember exactly who it was. Somebody's yelling at their
I know.
listening
Oh
device.
yeah, somebody's screaming. Largely because we probably spent 30 minutes
Men's
talking.
And you think
OU
it was you think it was a point guard of around what time period?
I don't know if it was a point guard. It was just I can't remember.
It
who
wasn't
the hell
Johnny Gilbert, was it?
Let's see.
The guy,
this is
what was
it.
the transfer?
I think
Indiana,
this
Lou
is
Moore.
Ebby Ra?
2012.
Could have been Ebby Ra.
Ebby would have been early 2000s though.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ebby was on that Final Four team.
Hold on.
Drew Lavender had a coast
Is that
to
right?
coast against Kansas State back in the day. That was with
Oh
cable
my
though.
God.
Stephen Pledger missed a three-pointer.
Oh
at the
yeah,
buzzer.
in Norman. It was in
Yes.
Norman.
Yes,
I was
what I
at
said.
that game
At Lloyd Noble,
when
yeah.
he turned around and looked at the camera.
Yes.
It was a 3-pointer.
I remember watching that on TV and just being devastated that they lost.
Yeah, that was kind of in the list. That would have been like 2015ish,
2012. February 6, 2012. Romero Osby. I remember him. He was a baller.
Bro, Osby was a baller. I remember the night that he committed. We were coming back from Lubbock from a Tech basketball or a football game.
Those were the days.
Those were some
man.
good teams.
Kelvin Sampson's first roster. Brian Miner, obviously.
98.
Rest in peace. Let's see, 1994, 95.
95.
Mm-hmm.
Other than Ryan Miner, do you want to take a shot?
I was 7. Ernie
I got
Abercrombie.
one.
Ernie Abercrombie is on there.
Anches.
John
John
Anches.
Anches. He was a king. Hootie Wiley.
He was not on there.
He wasn't.
Nope.
Was Bobby Joe Evans?
Uh-huh.
No, I think he'd already left by then.
Would he? This is 94.
Yes, 94, 95.
I remember being at a OU basketball game 94-95 when they beat Kansas. Set.
There was a
49.
freshman that was highly recruited.
Did he finish his career?
Oh, it's
at
Ryan
OU?
Humphrey.
No.
No, I think Humphrey would have been like 97-ish.
Is that right? Okay.
There was
Maybe
a
even-
sharp.
maybe
There was a
later
very
on before
famous
that.
sharpshooter who was not afraid to shoot the ball. Calvin Curry.
I remember the name. Don't really remember
He
him
was
playing,
a carryover from Billy Ball.
because I would have been.
But the freshman
7. I would have been like 6 or 7.
Ended up
and-
transferring to TCU.
I don't know.
Prince Fowler.
Prince Fowler.
Oh
Damn.
my God, he was going to save the program. He was such a big.
He was a hell of a recruit. Jason Yanish was on that team at
Hell
the
yeah.
center.
Those mid 90s teams were like the definition. You know, George, you're talking about like pulling games up on the iPad. That was like pulling the game up on like the handheld TV. Because I had a Little League game and we were going to the game.
Bobby Joe Evans was a freshman on the 95-96 team.
Okay, so he was there a year after.
Yes.
Like I would say that the height of my basketball fandom would have been like those late 90s, early 2000s. I remember getting checked out of school for the OU Arizona game when they upset Arizona 13. I think it was a 4-13 game. It was like during the middle of the day. And Aaron McGee made the baseline jumper. Well, that would have been, I guess, 2000. I think I would have been in 8th grade.
Here's a great team that could have done so much more. Nate Erdman,
Yes.
Corey Brewer,
Yes.
Eduardo Nahara,
Corey Brewer always threw up the Omega sign.
Yeah.
I thought that was the coolest thing ever.
Lou Moore, Bobby Joe Evans, Tim Heskett, Rinzai Stone.
Tim Heskett, King, Rinzai Stone, King. I saw them both eating lunch together and sat next to him at the bar. This was like 2 years ago, and I was nervous.
They went only 19-11 that year.
I played.
Probably lost a handful of 60 to 55 games.
I played one-on-one basketball against Edward Nahara.
Really? Basketball camp?
Yeah, no, it was in Tulsa, and I didn't know who he was. And I was like, I don't know, 13, and I was just kind of screwing around in the gym. And
so he was graduated.
Yeah, and I was like it was like when I was like doing like basketball lessons, and I was like a kid, and I didn't even know who he was, and I just saw him making all these shots, and he like came up and was like, hey, you want to play one-on-one or whatever? So I played him, and he was just screwing around. And then afterwards, he told me who he was, and I didn't know who he was, and I was like, oh yeah, this guy Edward, and my dad's like Naraha, and I was like, what? Nahara, whatever, and I was just like, holy crap. My dad told me, I was like, damn.
There's probably a 90% chance that I cried after the OU Michigan State game when he got hurt.
That was, I'm telling you, that's one of the that's one of the least celebrated but greatest moments in OU sports history. When Nahara came back out of the locker room.
Oh yeah,
when he was clearly concussed.
Awesome. That Michigan State team with Mateen Cleaves and all those guys. Those were unbelievable years of college basketball.
Josh, who are you rooting for?
I was rooting for Michigan State in that game. I'm not going to lie.
Damn.
It infuriated my family, but I absolutely was. I loved, because that was Cleveland.
We're sending Oleg Retsov over to kick your ass.
Unbelievable team. Perfectly fine. Because I love those teams. I can remember, Eddie made the joke about 60 to 55. I can remember Bedlam games in the 40s. Just bloodbaths in Gallagher-Iba.
I definitely remember driving to go skiing during spring break and watching an OU Missouri Big 12 championship in Dallas. I want to say it was right after the AAC had been opened. I want to say OU won that game 46 to 40 or something. It was a very and this is when I'm pretty sure that this is the year that OU, I think it was 02 maybe, that OU was the number one, one of the number one seeds in the tournament, and they're winning games in the 40s.
That was Kelvin, man. That was the way he was going to win. He was just going to bludgeon you to death, and it hadn't changed. I mean, Houston, the same thing.
Houston definitely scores more. I mean, obviously, I don't think he'd be able to keep up.
Well, they get better talent than OU did at that point.
Sure.
I think
Houston could win the national championship this year.
I do have some football stuff I'd like to talk about if you guys are open to.
Well, I mean, it's only been 50 minutes of college basketball talk. I mean,
people are going to love it.
And I've contributed. I've taken part in this. I can't even yell at you guys. This is bullshit.
Next week, we'll go over the 20 teams that I think can win the NCAA tournament this year. And why St. Mary's might be for real. But I think they're going to get beat tonight by San Francisco.
What do you guys think about the spring game stuff?
I think it's fascinating because I would love to sit here and blame the coaches for being paranoid, and it's just another example of how college football doesn't understand the fan. But it's just it's not just, and I'm talking about the Matt Rule stuff and canceling the game because they're afraid people are going to come in and poach their young players if they go out there and look good. But I mean, I know you've talked to some people, and it's a possibility that this would be the last spring game that OU has.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like this year's is going to change, but there's definitely conversations of, what does it look like in the future? I wouldn't say that, this is for sure going to be the last one. I just think it's becoming a discussion not only in Oklahoma but across the country. And I don't think OU would do it because of why Nebraska's doing it, whereas I do think that's Nebraska being a little paranoid. I mean, people are going to tamper with your players even if you don't play a spring
and they're already
game.
Paying a lot.
Yeah, and these guys know.
Stupidest reasoning I've ever heard.
Yeah, the spring game, I mean, half the time the good players aren't even playing, and I get it, you're playing some freshmen in it, and it shows up on tape, I guess, but these coaches already know who's good and who's not and who they want to tamper with. I think it's more so what Texas has come out and said, Steve Sarkisian, where he said that,
the timeline is messed up.
The schedules are longer. If you're playing in the playoff, you can be playing 16 games or more, and the timeline of it, and just the health and safety, and just you don't want to lose. I mean, last year OU loses Troy Everett. Now it wasn't in the spring game, but it was in spring, the first day of spring practice, and so I think having a lighter spring, I think that's what Oklahoma and other maybe schools are considering. And I think that going towards, and this is just my idea, not saying Oklahoma's thinking about doing this, but an NFL type model as we continue to move towards making this thing and paying the players, and if the portal's going to be open in the spring or whatever, is having some sort of maybe like a rookie mini camp in March or April where it's just incoming freshmen and maybe the transfer portal additions, and they're just doing individual drills, walk through schemes, stuff like that, and then have a full-blown mini camp once school's out in May, early June, just like the NFL does, have like 2.5 weeks of full practice, and they can do whatever they want in those 2.5 weeks.
Is there a pushback for that not to happen? Because that almost seems too logical. If we're truly trying to, quote unquote, get these guys ready for the next step in their life, you would think that would be the best way to do it.
I think the problem is not every school is on the same semester system. So like some of these schools, like OU gets out early May. Some schools don't get out of school till June.
Yeah.
So it's like
it's like the UCLA stuff with Dylan when he was starting school like
on the
2
quarter
weeks
system.
before.
And I think coaches don't want less practice. So I think that they would view it as maybe they're getting less practice, but I don't think so. Like I wonder if coaches would prefer to have 2 straight weeks where you're practicing every single day instead of spring ball where it's like you practice twice a week. They're still going to school. Their focus is still on school and football. Like I think coaches would almost prefer. So I don't think there's a huge pushback, and I think this could be the model if they can figure out the scheduling of it for each school, where you can have a rookie mini camp kind of thing where it's just freshmen, and then something where it's like everybody, in early June, like the first 2 weeks of June, you have practice and then they're off. They have summer workouts, and then fall camp starts end of July.
I
don't know,
think
it's
I think it all depends, like you said, on the coach. Are they old school about it, or are they like, we need to have scrimmage situations? I would tend to think that Brent would want to have as much scrimmage time as he could, because that's what he's used to doing. And Matt Rule has been up and down. I mean, he's been to the NFL. He's been in college. He can see the benefits of all of it. And Sarkisian, same way. He's done some NFL stuff. You, George, I mean, I was saying this the other day. You're the biggest expert on this in this market, because you've covered an NFL team. You've covered an offseason. You've seen what that stuff is like. Because I was asking you questions about, and you were, like strength and conditioning for Oklahoma. I can't see, like Brent Venables, that's been the bedrock of what their program's been built on since the 90s, since Bob Stoops came in. Like, is he going to trust players to just do the work on their own? Because I think we've seen time and time again, a lot of times you can't do that with kids this age.
Yeah, no, because NFL, a lot of these players, they just train on their own, and then they show up for mini camp, and then some of them will stay after mini camp and do some workouts at the facility, but it's largely, them kind of having their own personal trainers. So I don't think colleges would go to that model. I mean, maybe they would, and I don't know. I mean, when you start giving the players as much power as they're giving them, maybe they would say, hey, minicamp's optional, which I don't think that would fly with college coaches and college programs. But
I mean, are you going to get into NIL contracts where you have to meet certain performance standards for strength and conditioning if you want to keep your salary?
I think that's all in play.
That would be wild.
I mean, if that stuff's going to be in play, I think that you would have to be able to cut kids, right?
100%.
And I know that they do to a certain extent.
That's part of the
already.
roster cut down.
Right.
I mean, it's getting way more cutthroat than it's ever been.
You'll have some Luka type situations where it's just like, you don't work out hard, you're not in shape.
This model that I'm talking about too, I think is only possible if you get rid of the spring transfer portal window. I think you have to get rid of that if you want to do it this model. And if you do that too, I think you get rid of, then maybe you do still have spring games, because I think that's part of the worry.
In a perfect world, I've always thought it'd be cool to figure out a way to, and it'd be a lot of planning and a lot of, I don't even know how it could be done, but have an Oklahoma play I guess to a certain extent, Oklahoma State, or a regional program, have a spring game or a spring practice. Why couldn't you do, and I know why they couldn't, and they would never do it, but get 6 teams together and have a spring camp like some of these high schools do. I think that would be unbelievable.
NFL teams have joint practices and training camp all the time.
Sure.
You know, you could.
I just don't think anybody would ever do that.
Yeah, I think it'd be awesome though.
It'd have to be like OU, OSU, and OU Tulsa.
Be awesome. Now you would run into problems like OSU plays Tulsa next year. You couldn't do that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's just something that I think would be cool. Because I think it would be tough for some of these schools.
But if you did like
back east or whatever,
if you did like joint practices like the NFL and you did them during like the mini camp, like the 2 weeks, and say the last 2 days, you have North Texas come up and you pay North Texas, I don't know, $1 million to come up or $500,000 to come up and practice for 2 days with you, and you open that to the public. And you're not even really scrimmaging. Maybe you're doing some 7-on-7 against each other. You're doing 1-on-1s, their defensive line versus your offensive line, stuff like that. I think fans would come out and watch that.
I think that it would be cool, but we're back to square one of the coaches don't want to put tape out.
Yeah.
Let alone play against somebody that might pass along information to.
But if this thing's going to go to the NFL model, then, and I know this is going to be crazy to say this, the coaches have to stop being so paranoid. Like it can't.
I told Carrie yesterday, it's amazing in a sport that we didn't think could become any more paranoid. The level of paranoia couldn't become greater. It's going in that direction.
It's because all this new shit is being introduced that they aren't used to, and they're like, well, they look at the bad along. Anytime something changes, they're looking for the bad, like how is it going to hurt us with these changes versus how is this going to help us? That's just a default setting.
It's you stole the word. It's default. Like they just immediately, this is bad. Like I don't really fully understand it, but it's bad. Like and that's kind of what you get. And I mean, I'm not saying there's not drawbacks and things like that, but there's like I know some that are like, man, we've been overworked. This is crazy. This is nuts. And then people are like, well, what about these front office models? Nope, that's terrible. We won't be doing our own recruiting. Well, you can't have that both ways. You can't say the recruiting's killing us because we're working in the portal so much and we're doing high school recruiting. And then when somebody's like, yeah, okay, we're going to bring these guys in and they'll help take a lot of that off your plate. No, I don't want that either. Like you can't, like it just is what it is. And I think change, coaches like, those guys work insane hours. They get used to this is the way life is. This is what I have to do. And I think they just reject change inherently. Like it's just not in their code.
There's some stuff that's just not going to be able to cross over. Like voluntarily, allowing your players to set their own training hours and strength and conditioning stuff and do that that's not going to fly here. And I also think the recruiting part of it has to stay largely the same because these coaches have perfected dealing with families, and families are used to dealing directly with the people who are going to be coaching their sons. They're not going to be receptive to some general manager or a scout for the organization that is not going to be dealing with their kids day to day. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you were just kind of putting a hypothetical there, Josh, but I really don't expect the GM and personnel department to take over all the recruiting.
I wouldn't say all of it, but I don't think there's any question that is coming. Like to some degree, you're going to have those guys dealing with the families a lot more and taking some of that. And I mean, like a lot of it, I wonder if like it becomes a lot of the in-person evaluation stuff, like where they're going to watch these kids at practice and like, okay, what we like about this guy, he'd fit this for us, that kind of stuff. Like, I don't know. I think you're right. Relationship-wise, mom and dad want to generally care enough to be like, okay, our son likes this guy. Like he relates to this guy, or this guy's good because, one of our old teammates played for him and liked him, or whatever it may be. So I think you're right. There's still some human element, but more and more these kids and these parents aren't making decisions based off of that, at least not as much as they were. And secondarily, these parents are new every time. Like it's not like, I know what you're saying, but they're used to whatever they walk into the first time. Most of these parents haven't had a kid recruited before. So if they walk into it and the scouts are who they talk to, at least initially, that's just the way business is done. And I guarantee they'll get used to it.
I just think the bedside manner of the front office personnel that have been in the NFL is going to be so. Like I think of like the movie Moneyball when Billy Bean and Ron Washington go sit in the first baseman's the catcher that he's like, I've never played third base before. And he's like, is it hard? And Ron Washington and Billy's like, no, it's easy, Scott. And Ron Washington's like, it's incredibly hard.
That's a great scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, and what I think is interesting, Kerry, and you kind of lead into that point, how do those guys evolve? Because you're right, this is going to be born of NFL front offices, but their roles are going to be different. Like they are going to have a little bit of salesmanship to them because it's not just we're going to draft whoever we want and they're going to have to, come to our system. You're recruiting these guys. It's not going to be straightforward. And I know I've heard people say, well, what if it becomes a draft? It will never become a draft. I don't believe that for a second. There's too many schools. It would be too impossible to do it in any sort of fair fashion. So I just don't think that's remotely possible. But these guys, these front office types, I do think are going to have some ability to sell the school they work for, at least in some, maybe very minimal degree.
100%, Josh. Because they're going to be the ones inevitably negotiating their contracts. And so when they're negotiating and say, hey, this is all we can offer you money-wise, but hey, this is why you should still sign with us.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to have to be able to do some recruiting. And also, Josh, I think that the personnel office too, the staff will identify guys they like, but I think there's also going to be people in this front office that are going to be evaluating that same tape and say, hey, we kind of like this guy, but we also like this other guy a lot more for, the price value or whatever. I mean, it's going to be like the NFL when they go through the NFL draft process where they say, hey, we like this guy, but we think we could get him in the later round. It's just like, when they're recruiting, it's like, hey, we like this other guy and we actually think he might be cheaper.
It also helps, doesn't it, for like the NFL team that's going after this free agent or this draft pick? There's only 32 of them.
Yeah.
We're talking, triple that for
that's
college
why
athletics?
it's
quadruple, really.
Well, but for teams that like for the 5-star kid, is he going to be going
the
to
Power Fours?
Right,
yeah.
right.
That's why it's pivotal that they get whoever this GM hire, correct. And it might. I have no idea. Like I think going the NFL route is probably a good idea, but we'll just have to see how it plays out. And whoever they hire, it could be very much like the Curtis Lofton situation where maybe they, after a while, feel like they needed to go in a different direction. It's just so difficult to predict what this thing's going to look like. And nobody's done it. Like, there's no perfect GM out there.
There was a time last week we were sitting in the office and there were all kinds of like NIL bombs flying around. A lot of stuff with the House versus House settlement, with the House versus NCAA settlement. And we just kind of were like, how is this ever going to work? Like, this is just a shit show. It's never going to work. And today there was an article posted by Yahoo Sports by Ross Dellinger that is going into what the framework planning is for NIL moving forward, both, coming up and after the House settlement, if it passes. But it's like all this other stuff that we've been talking about. It's like everybody's making plans. They don't really know exactly if it's all going to work like they want it to, but they're trying to come up with a framework. I think, we don't know exactly what Randall Stevenson and Rosenberg are, talking with Joe about how it's going to be set up, what type of divisions they're going to have, how many extra people they have to hire, like we're talking about now, how much of the recruiting is on the front office, how much is on the coaching staff. And I mean, like the spring stuff is the exact same. And every aspect, I mean, even preseason camp, it's the same. But I think there are going to be a lot of things that nobody can quite foresee that's going to have to change. And George, you kind of alluded to that too. I think of new things every day when the stuff is floating around about, how are they going to navigate this? How are they going to navigate that? Because the coaches don't know. And I don't even think athletic directors, not just at Oklahoma, but everywhere, they don't really know. I mean, the thing that Ross Dellinger talked about today, they have 8 different athletic directors kind of working on this revenue share model / true NIL / enforcement. Like they're talking about, finally going and punishing people for tampering and all of this stuff. Like, we all agree this has all got to get under control before it can go forward, because it's still just a mess right now. At the same time, I kind of like what's wrong with the mess. The mess is kind of working. Chaos kind of works a little bit. I mean, it doesn't work for as many people.
I was going to say, it creates an unfair advantage.
It is a very unfair advantage, but
college football's had unfair advantages for eternity, right? I mean, it's never been a fair playing field technically.
Well, and trust me, the Power Four are not trying to set up a fair playing field for everybody. They're trying to make the advantage theirs.
The Power Four is a farce. The SEC and Big Ten aren't trying to set up a level playing field.
No.
Like there's a reason they're going to 14, like because they can just nuke the automatic bids, and the SEC and Big Ten will. I mean, I'm sorry, not automatic bids, but the automatic buys.
Right.
And the SEC and Big Ten will just swallow up the vast majority of all the entrants.
Yeah, after next year, I doubt we'll ever see a group of 5 buy again in the first round.
100%.
I think they should just get rid of the group of 5. In my opinion.
Just go to a
just
super
destroy
league.
all those universities.
Well, I mean, I think they should have their own league, and you can still play them in the regular season, but I just don't. There's no real world where any of those schools could ever win a national title, so why are they having a chance to play for one over schools that can actually win a national title? Like, no one can convince me that Boise State had a better chance to win the national title
They were never
this
gonna win
last
3
year
games
over
against that
Ole
competition.
Miss, Alabama, South Carolina, you name it, that got left out.
I love that, George. I get so tired of well, you've got to earn it. My eyes can tell me that they're not the same team. Like, they're just not. And that's great that they won 11 games. Playing South Carolina's schedule, they wouldn't have.
I mean, let's stop screwing around. Put the best teams in and let's see what happens.
I think they would like to do that. It's just that they have to take it in stages, so it doesn't look like that they're
Why do they have to do any of this?
Because they don't want it to look like that they're just, you know.
But all these schools have been doing that.
They don't want to get sued.
forever.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, too.
Well, then they should just make their own league. Make them have their own league.
You're acting like college presidents don't exist, though.
Yeah.
Because that's who has to give approval to all this stuff.
But let's be real. Most of G5 couldn't exist without the P5, without the paydays they get when they come play at Oklahoma or they come play at Alabama.
Well, Ross Dellinger's story that came out today, my takeaway is, one, there's a lot of legal issues in their way, a lot of legal hurdles for all of us to go through. But the fact that the Power Four is coming together and put together this sort of committee where they took 2 athletic directors from each of the 4 big conferences to create this thing tells me that this is kind of the first step towards this thing turning into a super league. Like, eventually, they're gonna break away.
They already had that plan that got released where,
and this isn't even the NCAA.
The Power Fours are going to take control of March Madness and everything else. So,
I mean,
they are slowly breaking away from the NCAA.
Correct.
Well, and as much as people made fun of, old boy running the Big 12 now, whose name I'm just going to completely
Bob Bowlesby?
forget.
Don Beebe?
Yeah.
Which one?
They're both jokes.
Now the current commissioner.
Brett
Yormark?
Yormark.
Yeah, Yormark. Yeah, his whole plan was to make the Big 12 so strong in basketball that you couldn't leave it behind, and I think it's going to work out beautifully for him. Like, I think that's clear. Like, when you're talking about, because let's be real. Aside from the SEC and the Big Ten and a couple teams in the ACC, there's nobody that's truly competing for a national title. Nobody. And in basketball, that's enough of a revenue sport that there are teams, and there's a ton of them in the Big 12 that can, Eddie's talking about Houston winning a national title. Like, there are real schools that matter when that sport is making money. And again, like, everybody kind of mocked him, like, to add in some of those teams, like, oh, it didn't bring anything to football. I don't think that was ever his plan. I think he did it really smartly.
Yeah, I still really feel like Greg Sankey and the Big Ten, I know their commissioner's not as well known, but they're the guys that are still running this whole thing.
100%. What, Petiti? Isn't it Petiti in the Big Ten? Yeah.
Tony Petiti.
Wake me up when it's all done.
It's going to be a while, buddy.
I know.
You got a lot of basketball games to watch
I just don't
between
think
now
that
and then.
the enforcement thing. I just don't think the cat's out of the bag. You're not going to be able to enforce any. You
The
might
true
be able to
value of
enforce
NIL
like
stuff.
big stuff, but the little stuff that probably needs to be taken care of because it adds up over time. That stuff's never going to get fixed. We need to figure out how to live in that world, I think.
Well, how many? I mean,
my
like how
question
many?
is, how does the NFL do this?
As far
Like,
as
how
what?
do they manage? I mean, because
They just have contracts with the players.
There's a difference.
They just have contracts with the players for their performance, for their their employment of the football team.
But they have NFL players have NIL because they go get out ad deals.
Yeah, it's
That's
just
why
like the Matt Stafford at the sleep number and all that stuff.
The teams or the organizations don't help them get those deals.
Yeah, they just have their own agents that do that. All right, apologies if you had a little weirdness there. We had some power issues in the other room. Fixed now. I think what it was is the control room was like, you guys are talking way too much fucking basketball today. I'm going to stop this. So we weren't talking basketball. But, yeah, I think the NIL stuff also, we know it's confusing. But I think the main thing that we've learned, and we talked about this a lot, and George knows this, is like we just have to talk about it because, if people get too uninformed about that stuff, it becomes impossible to deal with, and we have to deal with it on the board, at some point. So we're kind of taking this stance. If you want to be educated about it, we'll educate you about it. We're not going to go out of our way to beat you over the head with it, but it's something that we have to talk about to some extent because it's going to affect the way that college football works. And I know there's some people that get frustrated, like, I don't care about all this stuff. It's ruining the sport for me. It's not ruining the sport for you. You're still going to watch the damn football games. It's just the stuff behind the scenes is getting very, very complicated. And it's just like with the, people criticize what the administration is doing. You guys heard me today. I'm not afraid to criticize the administration over things. It's very confusing who is, I don't know, George, I'd say like who is at fault for anything other than just change happening faster than people can deal with it.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's at fault. They gotta win. No matter what this new college football world looks like.
Yeah, and they know that. I think they know that. All right, football is almost over. Super Bowl coming up. A lot of Sooners involved in this one.
It just sucks when football's over. Like when the Super Bowl ends, I'm always like, this sucks because, I don't care that much about college basketball. March Madness is great, but then when March Madness is over, it's like, what do we have left to live for?
Baseball.
Your marriage.
My marriage will help.
Find
a lot.
baseball team. Start watching
We
golf.
have a march to the NBA Finals, George. That's what we have this year.
That's true.
If the Thunder do go, and make a run,
And
it will eat into the summer, and all of a sudden will be because you'll go from playoffs, softball, World Series. Hopefully they start today. Good luck, Patty Gasso. I know you need it. And then, then it'll be like basically because once July rolls around with the SEC and the way that they string stuff out, the summer's kind of short these days.
Yeah, I am dialed into the Thunder.
I am sad about this being the final football game, though.
Watching it, the football. It just sucks because
Real quick on
Super Bowl.
Quick on Thunder. I'm giving you my starting lineup. You can tell me whether you agree or disagree with Chet back.
Mm-hmm.
Shea Gilgeous, Dort, J-Dub, Chet, Isaiah Hartenstein.
No, I would start Kaysen. I'm bringing Hartenstein off the bench. I'm starting Kaysen.
He's not a 5.
Kaysen or Wiggins, depending on who's hot. But it all depends on matchups. Like I would start Hartenstein if they're playing the Mavericks. I'm starting Hartenstein. But if they're not, or if they're playing the Cavs, I'm starting Hartenstein. But if they're not, I wouldn't start both of them. I think having Hartenstein come off the bench is going to be electric. Like having him run the second unit with, whoever is going to be. It doesn't matter. You could have thrown out any starting lineup there, and I would have been like, yeah, sure, sounds great.
No Daniel Tice.
I don't know what that.
I'm just kidding. Well, he's going to be a backup. He's a serviceable veteran backup.
We were convinced he was just a pawn in setting up a bigger trade last night.
Got 25 minutes to do it.
after. We're that
2
close,
o'clock
huh?
today?
Wow.
I will say
Hasn't been much.
Because of what Mark Dagnall said, he refused to address anything. So we're like, Tice must be on the move too.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
If he wants to stay around, though, he can have that final roster spot.
the Thunder's
Better than
run
Brandon Carlson.
and my wedding planning will make up for football being gone. It just sucks like Sundays being gone where you just like...
I had no idea what to do on this past Sunday.
Yeah,
with
it
no
sucks.
football.
The Pro Bowl weekend always sucks.
Look, my father, my brother, they're both Chiefs fans. We know Joe Jr.'s a Chiefs fan. All that being said, I think I would love to see Philadelphia win.
100%. I'm in on Philly.
I've already claimed victory because OU has so many guys on both sides that I'll just claim victory for whoever wins. I hope it comes down to the final
Third straight year
minute.
they've had the most guys in the Super Bowl. That's
crazy. It's even
That's a wild
crazier to
stat.
think that like all these guys, and I guess there's some oddities, but for the most part, they're all kind of from like the same core. Like outside of Lane and maybe James Winchester, I guess.
It's that
Everybody
whole
else played
transition
together.
from Stoops to Lincoln.
Yeah. What could have been?
I
I think it was falling apart.
If P. Ryan and Hollywood score for the Chiefs, I'll be happy for the Chiefs to win. If they play a major
What
part
if
in them winning the
Calcaterra
game.
catches a touchdown?
That'd be
in
awesome.
The,
I'm-
Super Bowl. That'd be sweet.
Grant's the one out of all those guys that I would say I know the best, and that would be awesome to see him do that.
It was pretty cool.
He's had a good year.
Lane Johnson was on the part of my take this week. It was a great interview. I think I often forget how long he's been in the NFL and just how dominant he's been when they were going through like the Lane
He's a Hall of Famer.
Johnson stats.
He's gonna
You
be
could
Hall of
argue like him and Trent Williams, maybe two of the best to ever play the
Most
sport.
dominant of this era at their position.
Which is
crazy.
crazy. Guys, do you remember like midway through his senior year, I was not 100% sure he was good. Like much less like gonna be one of the great offensive tackles to ever play the game.
Well, I mean, Josh,
Like,
we were all
he grew
surprised
so
at,
much.
We were surprised at his combine performance because we were like,
Yeah.
Lane Johnson runs a 4.5. Like, when did this happen? Nobody was ever talking about him running 4.5s when he was at Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you knew he was a good athlete.
He was a
played
quarterback in JUCO.
but, like,
Came in.
But to use a analogy from a more recent era, like I don't remember hearing stuff that I'm like, well, Bruce Feldman will have that guy on the freaks list. Like I didn't hear things like that. You're like, oh, he's a good athlete, but he's put on 70 pounds since he was recruited.
He's just such a nice guy. He was up in the suite with us when we went to Zach Bryan's concert, and just super chill. I think he'd had a couple of gummies before that, but I mean, yeah, like it hadn't. The one thing about Lane is like it hasn't gone to his head at all. He's just still kind of the same guy he's always been, which makes you even happier for his success.
Sure. It's awesome.
And then our guy Creed, hope that he's got 2 rings though. I mean, man, he doesn't know
Has he been
anything
calling
but
home
playing
lately?
for a Super Bowl championship.
This is his 4th year in the league. I think I tweeted it after the AFC Championship. This is the 4th year in the league. This is the 3rd time he's playing in a Super Bowl. All right.
He's on a
3rd time.
We'll see how it plays out, but he's on a like all-time, maybe even Hall of Fame type of trajectory.
Creed?
If he keeps this up.
And especially if him and Pat Mahomes could play their careers together.
Yeah.
Well, you think about Orlando was on that team, but they couldn't afford to keep him.
He's got a chance to go down as like one of the great centers. Like he really Creed's that good.
It's crazy. Shawnee, Oklahoma.
He still
Shout out.
can't really snap the ball sometimes.
Lost to Bishop Kelly though.
He changed his grip this year. He's done really well.
I remember Eddie going to see him. Like he's one of those guys that's vivid for me. Remember watching the first time I ever saw him, he was a high school tight end at Shawnee.
Yeah.
He was just like a big jumbo tight end. You're like, he's way too big to be a tight end, but he can really freaking move. And then the next year you watch him and you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. He was just crushing people for them.
The other insane thing too is just Jalen Hurts playing in 2 Super Bowls already. Like if you would have told me, because I remember the great debate back in the day was who's the best of the 3, Baker, Kyler, and Jalen. And it was pretty clear that Jalen was 3rd on that list. Like it wasn't like he was pretty clearly the 3rd guy, and he has gone further than either of those 2 ever have.
It's I think the big question mark right now with Jalen Hurts. He's getting ready to play for his 2nd Super Bowl, and I think the question I think about sometimes,
can he do it?
like, well, is he good?
Yeah.
Is Jalen Hurts good? I think he's for what they ask him to do in that system, he's fantastic. Who would, and this is a conversation they had on PMT, I think a week ago, could you insert somebody else in there and they're getting the same thing? Like, he runs the tush push probably better than anybody in the world because he can squat 700 pounds.
Yeah.
And the offensive line is just incredible.
I think so, too.
I think that
Saquon Barkley seems like a good dude, too.
I think that Justin Fields has taught me a lot about how I view Jalen Hurts, and that, look, I was an asshole. I didn't think going back in the day that Lincoln would ever want him at Oklahoma when people were talking about him transferring in. I was like, what's he going to do in Lincoln Riley's system? He doesn't throw the ball well enough. And granted, Lincoln saw something to where he could build an offense around him. It wasn't what Baker and Kyler did, but I just remember that Baylor game. I know George remembers that well.
Yeah.
But like his face shield shattering in that game. Like, he took such a beating as the quarterback at Oklahoma. He got his
Jalen
ass
Hurts
kicked.
might be one of the toughest players.
Yeah,
that's
he's a
played here
tough
in the last-
MFer. And the other thing, too, is I don't know how great of a quarterback he is. I think he's good. I think he's above average. I think he's a hell of an athlete. Like, one of the best athletes we've seen in a while. Like, his ability to, like, just... I mean, he's like a running back playing the position, and he can throw.
He's made some beautiful throws.
Oh, the fourth down throw to A.J. Brown in the NFC Championship.
I don't know if we've ever seen a quarterback as strong as him.
He has a certain ability too, I think, and we saw this firsthand at Oklahoma, the way that he was kind of able to carry that 2019 team. I think there's just something about him that people gravitate to, and he's a great leader for that unit.
I'd put it like this: like, I don't think Jalen Hurts holds a candle to like Caleb Williams as a thrower, but I don't know if Caleb Williams will ever have as much success in the NFL. If he wins a Super Bowl, I don't know that Caleb Williams will ever win a Super Bowl as a quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, that conversation. I think that, like, if Jalen would have got drafted by Chicago, he would have been all about
screwed, just like Justin Fields.
And I'm pretty jaded in like my thought process on this because of what happened to Sam. But if you go to a bad franchise, you're so far behind everybody else.
If
like
you go to a bad franchise that doesn't have an offensive line and your quarterback.
Look at what happened to Baker.
Yeah.
Look at what happened to Bo Nix. He got put into a pretty good situation this year and took advantage of it. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of that has to do with Bo Nix being extremely good.
But
and
Russell Wilson couldn't succeed with similar surroundings.
And I think that, like, well, I don't know. Sean Payton is probably a little bit better equipped. But you're right.
Yeah. I mean, the Eagles have done, Howie Roseman has done a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
Building this team.
100%.
For Philadelphia.
He's one of the best.
They lose Jason Kelce, and their offensive line is still the standard.
They're unbelievable.
Guys,
Saquon
there's
is unbelievable.
people talking about them and Myles Garrett. Like, that they're going to find a way
that
to
would
make
be
that
insane.
work. And you're like, holy God.
Garrett's not like a $50 million guy, though, is he?
No, and I bet money he'd renegotiate because, it's clear what he wants is a chance to compete and to go play for them. Like, oh, yeah, you guys, whether they win or lose on Sunday, you guys were there. You were right on the cusp, and you bring a dude like me in. He had 14 sacks playing for a terrible team. And we know what that means watching our Mason last year.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to get sacks when the team can just run at you in the fourth quarter.
So who's everybody picking? Chiefs? I just can't pick against the Chiefs.
I think the Chiefs are going to win, but if the Eagles end up winning and the Eagles kind of win handedly, I wouldn't be surprised. It would have been an eye.
Yeah.
I think the Eagles have been fantastic.
If somebody pulls away, it'll be them.
Defensively, the Eagles and the Chiefs, both probably the two best defenses in the league.
Vic Fangio, too. Like, I covered him. He was the coach I primarily covered when I was in Denver, and he wasn't a great head coach, but he also, they were playing Drew Lock. It was just a disaster at quarterback and offense. But he's smart, man. He's a great defensive coordinator, and he's just a football guy. So I hope he wins for his sake. I like covering him.
By the way, Myles Garrett will only count $20 million against the cap next season.
Some of the stats
it jumps to 40 and 27 though.
Mm-hmm. Some of the stats that have come out on the Chiefs and what they've been able to do over the last 17
straight one-score games they've won.
That one's probably 1A. This would be 1B. Kansas City Chiefs are 29-0 over the last 3 seasons when leading after the first quarter.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
They are 64-7, winning 90% of the games since 2018 when leading after the first quarter overall.
Yeah,
I think I'm going to pick the Eagles.
And I don't think that's crazy. I don't think that's crazy, Josh.
I just think they're better up front on both sides of the ball.
I think Saquon will be the difference. I think he's going to get loose.
They can control the flow of the game. Yep. I think they can slow Mahomes. I think they can at least keep him off the field.
I think perfect world situation, Eagles take the lead with 2:30 left, and it's Mahomes' time to go win a 3rd straight championship. And there's no flags on the field. I just want a clean, decided game.
Whose perfect world?
My perfect world.
You're just talking about
the Chiefs
like on the edge of my seat. Can Pat Mahomes lead the Chiefs?
That scenario, the Chiefs are winning the Super Bowl in that scenario.
I think it'd be phenomenal. And if they don't, what a story that is.
You think it'd be phenomenal if he failed to win and given the opportunity?
I would flip it.
Either way.
I would flip it where...
Doesn't matter to me.
Where the Eagles have the ball with 2 minutes left down 4, and they have to go score a touchdown, and can Jalen Hurts
Either way.
I would love that.
That's fine with me, too. I just want to be fourth quarter, who's going to win? And not fourth quarter, 10 minutes left. Fourth quarter, coming out of the 2-minute warning.
We don't
know.
Some good Super Bowls the last couple years.
I forgot how good the first one was with the Eagles.
It was awesome.
And the Chiefs.
I mean, the Eagles win that game if Jalen Hurts doesn't fumble.
I completely forgot about all that.
And most people think that's the best game he's ever played. Was on the biggest stage he ever played in.
He was great that day, other than the fumble.
Yeah.
All right. It's going to be fun. Thunder's going to be fun tomorrow night. Every once in a while, you just got to let us do our thing. So I apologize for the first 50 minutes and all the basketball talk for those of you
it's February.
who hate basketball.
What
I enjoyed it. Once we got Eddie to stop being so condescending to us, I really enjoyed it.
Maybe I'll start watching more college basketball now.
You won't.
No, I know.
Eddie doesn't want you to because he has superiority over you. And if you start watching it, you come up to his level a little bit more.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm going to watch some college baseball this year, though. I will be watching some college baseball.
The baseball schedule, TV schedule came out today. Going to see a lot of OU games on the SEC Plus.
Yeah, basically every game is going to be televised. They have 6 national television games, but for the most part, I think they're still working some stuff out for the UT Arlington game in a week and a half or something, but everything else will be on SEC Network or ESPN Plus.
And softball, these first 4 games, a couple are on Soonersports.com. They start today.
Yeah, the first game.
And one's on Mountain West Network. I think the second game
tonight's on Mountain West Network, which is actually a pretty good production. They do a pretty good job with it. And then they're back to Soonersports.com, I think, for the next 2 games. And then
I think just one, and then there's another that's...
The final 3 games are on ESPN Plus.
Yes.
All out in San Diego, Los Angeles.
So yeah, if you want to check
them
out,
already played today.
Did they
beat number 12 Florida State? Softball off and running.
All right, so there you go. We'll be back again.
Wait. On Tuesday.
Oh yeah, we got to talk about this real quick.
I got to the office and there was a note that had been pinned. And Josh, I don't think you know about this. There was a note that was taped to the door when I got here on Monday morning to the Sooner Scoop office. And it reads, and at first I thought, is this a death threat for me or George or Carrie? And it wasn't, which was kind of nice. But Sooner Scoop, this is handwritten and dated 2/2/2/25. I've come by the office for about a week trying to catch you. My name is, and we'll leave the name out, and I go by, he gives his name and gives his phone number. I have something that the Sooners football team desperately needs right now. I've had it ready for a few months, but can't seem to find anyone from OU to listen to it for a couple minutes. Perhaps Sooner Scoop could help. It could be a real coup for you guys. This is a song is dynamic and definitely in the hype category, and originally owned completely by me, writer, publisher, producer, and performer. Please call for more information. Thank you. And he gives his name. So I don't know if we're going to contact this guy, but supposedly there's a song out there that has been crafted.
We absolutely have to play it on the pod.
Let us know in the YouTube comments if you want to hear this song.
And we will.
And guess
entertain.
what genre it might be.
I wonder if I'm guessing country and western, but that's just me.
That's the vibe I got.
Yeah, I don't think that he's laying down any tracks, but maybe he is. Maybe we'd be surprised.
Maybe he's like the next
for
Zach
a country
Bryan.
and western song to be like a hype song?
That's a good point. That's a good point. Because when I think of like a hype song, I'm thinking of like the songs that like KJ 103 was coming out with in like 2000, stuff like that. We're going to Miami.
But like Ain't No Love in
Going to
Oklahoma.
Miami.
Is that not a hype song?
in Miami.
Yeah, yeah. So you know that.
Yeah, dude, we had that whole CD. My dad, we used to play it from the moment we left Tulsa to the moment we got to the stadium. We'd listen to the entire CD.
I would keep that between us. I mean, that song was definitely like sold on a CD, like at the Big Red Shop, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
I think so.
I don't think you could just go to.
I've looked for
It's
it.
going to be
'cause
very
there's some
upsetting
good
to
songs on there.
Scissorhands if we play somebody else's song and don't
Does
give
he
him
have a
shot.
song? Well, he could have a
He'll
song.
make a song for us.
We'll have
There's
an,
no
we'll
doubt.
have an OU fan talent show this summer.
Oh my God, that'd be amazing.
That would go extremely well, I'm sure.
I was thinking about doing an Instagram contest for favorite OU player.
We'd have to post on Instagram first.
I know. That's the point. Let's get our Instagram game going.
We'll put this clip on. Josh, do you still think they're going to put a Texas Roadhouse in Gaza?
I do love Texas Roadhouse.
Well, when Trump takes over Gaza,
TRH
start
is
talking about
so good. I need to go. I need to go there. It's been too long.
All right, that's going to do it. We'll be back again next week. Who knows where we'll go with that pod, as we'll have a Super Bowl behind us and maybe some more clarity on what's going on with NFL or front office personnel and NIL and all that stuff. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening. Don't forget, go to Sooner Scoop. Sign up. Only $1 to get going. If you want to know how to support us, if you listen to the YouTube, you listen to the podcast, watch the YouTube, I should say. We don't need super chats or anything like that. Just go be a subscriber to Sooner Scoop. That's how that's your best way to let us know that you enjoy what we do. So thanks for listening. We'll see you back here next week for another edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast right here on Soonerscoop.com.